Okay, hello and welcome to Cinema Chat. This is the podcast where you talk about the movies and the people that made them. And today, I am, well, of course, I'm your humble host, David Heath, and I am very pleased to have back on the show Ginger Pauley. Ginger, thank you very much for coming on the show again.
Oh, thanks for having me, David. I'm really having fun. Thank you.
Yeah, Ginger Pauley and the Who's Your Daddies. Also, Ginger has appeared many times on Conan O'Brien's show, and also, most importantly and most dear to her heart, I believe, Ginger is your program Vintage America, which is available on Tubi, and it's available somewhere else now too, isn't it?
It's on Amazon Prime, Tubi, and I think there may be another one as well.
Yeah.
It's kind of just popping up everywhere, which is fine with me.
Yeah, the more the merrier. Yeah, I'm so, and your show, Vintage America, is so fun to watch, and you and I, you're talking about an age where you weren't even around, and but it's still fun to talk about that. What makes you? I'm putting you on the spot. What makes you like to talk about Vintage America?
I guess because I've always done it. I mean, I've been doing it since I was a kid. I've been learning about vintage things, and I had a fascination for the music. And I don't know. I don't think I told you this the last time that we did a podcast, but I when I was about 11 years old, I was going to a very strict Christian school. And my mother and my grandmother and my great aunts were taking me around to vintage sales and estate sales and yard sales. So I learned at a very early age, even before I was 11, what things were, and you look at something and you know how old it is. So I was taught at a really early age. One of my aunts collected furniture. One of my aunts collected old purses. My grandmother collected everything. Another one of my aunts collected vintage jewelry. So they knew what stuff was, and they taught me. And when I was about 11, I was going to a very strict religious school. And at one of the outings that my aunts and my grandma took me to, I found a Charleston record. And I listened to it, and I was just like, wow, what is this? This is amazing. And they were having a talent show at my school. And it was, I don't know if you remember the movie Footloose, but I also wrote Teresa. But my school was very, very against dancing of any kind. And, I thought, well, this is Charleston. This is the Charleston. This is what they did in the 20s. Of course this would be fine for me to do at my talent show at my school. I was in sixth grade, and so we all had to audition, and I worked up a routine where I was doing the Charleston. I mean, I watched a bunch of old movies and listened to this record over and over, and I learned it, and I did it for my audition for the talent show. And the school called my parents, and
they flipped out.
Yeah, they did, and they're like, your daughter can't do this. This is dancing. My mom's like, this is the Charleston. This is 1920s. Are you kidding me? They would not let me do it.
Mm-hmm.
They would not let me do it. So I ended up having to sing an Amy Grant song for our talent show because they wouldn't let me do the Charleston. So at a very, very young age, I was exposed to the vintage world. And my grandma and my great aunts came from Oklahoma during the Great Depression. And my grandmother contributed to a book about the Great Depression. So she had a lot of her own life and a lot of her history to pass on to us. And I learned a lot about the 1930s and earlier at a very young age. Kind of a long answer to your question.
No, if someone asked me, why am I doing this podcast, I'd give them a very long-winded answer too. I don't. It's just a passion that you have, and it's just something that you've got the opportunity now with technology to get information out there and to make people excited about yesteryear. And I know I've watched your show, and
Thank you.
it's pretty fun. I haven't not watched
Thank
all the
you.
episodes yet, but I will get to them. I promise. And it's just it's a pleasure to watch. And of course, you also did the movie, the oh gosh, what's it called? I now can't remember the one the silent movie that you did.
The Wild Man of Kakadu.
There you go. Yeah, Miles Kakadu.
Yes.
Yes.
Keith Picot. Keith Picot. He lives in Canada, on this little island in Canada, and he does these little silent films. I don't know if you check out Keith Picot, but he does black and white silent films, and he makes them for his little small community. He makes one for the grocery store, one for the hardware store, one for the barber shop, and they show them in their little movie theater in town. And this is kind of what he does. He's a barber and a vintage collector and a movie maker. So he's the local barber in town, and he makes these little ads for the town. And Keith asked me a few years ago, I actually met Keith in New York when I was in New York in 2012. And we became friends. And he said, if I'm in LA, would you like to do a film? And I said, absolutely, yes, let me know. And he's like, well, who else do you think would be good for this? And I said, I have a couple of friends that might be good for this. I don't know if you happen to notice who else is in the film with me. Phil Crosby Jr. Plays the doctor, and I play the nurse. Dutch Newman plays 2 or 3 different parts. Dutch Newman is Lorraine Newman's twin brother. Lorraine Newman was in, she was in Saturday Night Live in the 70s and 80s. And Dutch also did the music for my show, Vintage America with Ginger. He wrote the theme song and contributed a lot of the music for my show. So it's a small world here, even though we're in LA. It's a small vintage world.
Yeah.
So, I was really, really grateful to Keith that we all got to do that film, and that was so fun.
It really is a fun film, and I definitely recommend everybody to watch it. I think I watched it 3 times, and it's just so funny. When you're trying to attract the attention of the police officer, and you seem unable to do it until you whip out a cup of coffee and donuts. It's just hilarious.
It was so much fun to shoot. We shot that in the old zoo in Los Angeles. What was the old zoo in the 40s and 50s and 60s? So all of that old-looking, the gates and the stone and all of that, that's all in the old zoo in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Very historic place.
It's utter fun. It's just absolutely fun. And that actually dovetails into our subject for this program, which we're going to talk about the film Mickey from 1918, starring Mabel Normand. And I think, I told you this, that scene is an awful lot like a scene named Mabel Normand might have shot. When the scene in front of the cage, and you can't get the attention of the cop, but that donut and coffee gets his attention. It's just funny. But that was very similar to something Mabel Normand might have done. But in this film, in 1918, I mean, of course, let's build it up. Now, I've talked about Mabel Normand. I spoke with Timothy Lepler, the gentleman who wrote just a fabulous book about Mabel. And we talked in general about Mabel, but we didn't really talk very much specifically about films in general in any particular film. So this is an appropriate conversation to have a few months later. And Mabel Normand, of course, star of, if you didn't know this, 219 films, and a good portion of those, unfortunately, are lost. A good portion of those are 10 minutes long. But she was hoping to be a serious actress, and she somehow got involved with comedy and Max Sennett. And there was a turning point And so I wanted to kind of foreshadow what was going on before, which was she made a movie with Mary Pickford in 1912 called The Mender of Nets. And I asked you to watch that movie, and what'd you think of that movie first?
I thought it was really interesting. Now you will know this. I didn't look this up, and I didn't really research. But is this the only film that Mabel and Mary did together?
Yes, it is. Max Sennett
Okay.
said, and now this was directed by D.W. Griffith, but Max Sennett said there's only you could only have room for one of those two ladies on the set, and D.W. Griffith never directed Mabel again, and Mary Pickford never started another film with Mabel again.
Gosh,
They
I don't know. I mean, I disagree with that. I think that they were fabulous on set together. I mean, on film together anyway. The one scene that I really, really loved was when, the two of the girls find out that the guy has both of them, in interest, and Mary consoles Mabel's character.
oh yeah.
She actually hugs her, and it was just really touching. And I went, wow, both of these gals have just a great chemistry together on set, and on film. You can just tell. I'm really surprised they didn't do something else together, because I think it would have been really powerful if they had been. If they had done something together where they were friends or had some kind of relationship.
Yeah, it is kind of unfortunate that we didn't see them together again, and the Mender of Nets is a 12-minute film, so everybody listening, I mean, it's gonna take 12 minutes to watch it. Just put it on, watch it on.
It's great. It's nothing.
It's on YouTube.
So fast.
And this is no slapstick comedy. It's a really serious drama, but it's only 12 minutes. And D.W. Griffith, of course, really knew how to dial up drama, and Max Sennett, was more comedy, obviously. And then we get to the point where that film Mender of Nets is kind of a divider between Mabel and Mary Pickford. Mary went on to be in all kinds of dramas with comedy, and Mabel went on to just star in tons and tons of straight comedy. But then we get to Mickey in 1918, which is not a straight comedy. Wouldn't you call it a drama with a lot of humor? Wouldn't that how you describe it?
I was kind of surprised that they called it a comedy first, a comedy drama. Because I didn't see it like that. I thought it was more dramatic than comedic. So I was a little surprised about that. The other thing I was kind of surprised when I went back and I looked, going with Mabel and Mary through the years. In 1912, Mabel Normand did 16 films, and Mary Pickford did 27 films. So Mary was obviously the bigger star, at the time. Can you imagine doing 27 films in a year? I mean, granted, they were short, so they were under 20 minutes, but still, that's a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. When Charlie Chaplin was with Max Sennett, there was a point in time where people said, unlike today, where films come out on Fridays, new ones come out on Fridays. They reset for the weekend. Then it was on Tuesday, and so a lot of people would go and they'd shell out good money to see this week's Chaplin film.
Right. Okay. Wow.
Yeah, that's fun. It's kind of funny. But Mabel ended up churning out just 219 films. It's just absolutely incredible. But this one here is somewhat of a masterpiece. Max Sennett did not direct what you would call epic films by any stretch. If you watch his movies, he would make them as quickly as possible and get them out as quickly as possible. And again, going back to Charlie Chaplin, you look at every time Chaplin moved to a new studio, he got better because he got more and more creative freedom, and then he would take a lot longer to do each project. But Max Sennett would just churn these things out so fast. But in this particular case, I want to say the filming took 3 whole months, which is just like extraordinary for Max Sennett, and it's kind of amazing. Well, actually, it was not directed by Max Sennett. I apologize. It was directed by F. Richard Jones, but it was a Max Sennett film, and directed
Okay.
by Richard Jones. F. Richard Jones.
Now Mabel produced this film. This is her production company.
Yeah, but it was also it was the it's um, kind of like the it's a subsidiary of Max Sennett though.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like Max Sennett provided this studio for her, and
Okay.
and 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 and,
Were they
and
were they pals? Were they friends? Her and Max?
Max Sennett and Mabel were they were never really pals. They either had a love they were lovers, or they were on the outs with each other. They really didn't like each other very much. They loved each other, but they didn't like each other very. Max Sennett would not be faithful to Mabel, and I think that probably it was the other way around too. But
Wow.
yeah, I think that and I think that it was indicative of just the way human nature is. What, you're gonna cheat on me, I'm gonna cheat on you, but they were that's who knew, and who knows who the most responsible party is. It's probably 50-50. But Max Sennett, he did everything he could to get Mabel back, and this was actually an effort to get her back, and giving her a studio. And she's like, "Well, thank you very much. I'll take it." But they were never together again. So he was like giving her basically the farm, and she said, "Okay, I'll take it, but we're not getting back together." So
Oh.
and I talked with Tim Leffler about this, and it's outlined a lot in his book. And forgive me for if Tim's listening to this, because he may very well be, because of his adoration for Mabel, but if he would know more about it than I do. I read his book, and it does outline it pretty well. But they had an on again, off again relationship. But by this time, it was basically off, and she fulfills her contract, and yeah, she had her own studio, but it was run by Max. Anyway, so getting a phone call. I gotta.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, it's all right.
No, I don't. So I just got thrown off there. I'm gonna have to edit this part out. So
It's okay. You're popular.
yeah, evidently. Anyway, F. Richard Jones actually directed the film, and he directed Mabel with. He directed her with Molly O and the Extra Girl, and then went on and directed 2 more shorts with Mabel. And his final film was in 1929, a film called Bulldog Drummond. But he was only 30 years old when he died, so he was a very young man. And
Wow.
so yeah, that's pretty young for a director. And yeah, he directed a lot of films. But let's see, and Mabel, of course, plays Mickey, who owns a mine. And first of all, what do you think of the dynamic of Mabel and her caretakers? Because she's an orphan, and so what do you think? What do you think about that relationship? That was kind of crazy, right?
Well, Well, yeah, I first thought her dad and her, this is the thing. Oh gosh, there's so many things I gotta say. Okay, first off, in the film, the first thing I noticed is the music. That's because that's just how I am. I had to turn it off.
Yeah, I'm not. I can't remember which one.
Bad. Oh gosh, I'm so sorry. The music in the Mindernettes was fantastic. It was great.
Oh yes.
But in Mickey, I could not stand the music. I had to turn it off.
I don't disagree.
And yeah, so I thought, okay, I'll give it a chance. And about 5 minutes in, I went, nope. And I just had to turn the sound off completely because it just wasn't helping the mood at all. I mean, at all. It just wasn't. So first off, I thought, okay, is this her dad? Is this, the first screen that you see is Minnie. Minnie is Joe's housekeeper.
Yes.
Like he needs a housekeeper. They're in a freaking shack. Right? I'm like, why does he have a housekeeper? He lives in a freaking shack. And I have a whole nother discussion about Minnie that I got to go into. But from the beginning now, I looked at Mabel and I'm like, okay, she's not a kid. This is not a young girl. So I looked her up immediately and I went, how old was Mabel when she did this film? She was 25 years old when she did this film. She's not a kid. She's not a child. She's very childlike. And I love the little part where she, they think that she's fallen down the mine. And she rescues the cat.
Yes.
And she scoots her butt down the hill. She gets the cat and she's scooting down the hill. It's like, I can recall doing that when I was a kid. She's very childlike. And, at first you don't really know. I'm like, who is this guy? Is this her dad? Is this her, caretaker? And then you see the letter. But if I can elaborate, talking about Minnie Devereaux.
Yes, please.
Now, who's playing her father's housekeeper. At the very beginning of the film, which they used to do back then, all the credits are at the front, and it was the cast. You didn't see the crew or anybody else. But Minnie is not listed in the cast of the film at all.
Yeah, it's right.
Now, I'm guessing this is because of the times, and there were some racial issues.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked up Minnie, and I remember, this is so funny, she was known as Minnie Ha Ha. They called her Minnie Ha Ha, and that was a role that she played. She was always the American Indian. She played an American Indian role all the time. I loved her character. She's hilarious. Smoking the pipe. And I'm like, just like it's nothing. Like it's what she does every day. This woman was an amazing actress, and I think that she was really, really undercredited as far as the film business went. I remember at a really young age, my mom saying something about Minnie Ha Ha. And it was in a joke or something, but I remember my mom saying something, oh, Minnie Ha Ha, Minnie Ha Ha. And I was like, what is that, Minnie Ha Ha? And I see it, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a Minnie Ha Ha. She was American Indian, and I don't know if you did any research about Minnie, but she was a Cheyenne Indian. And Minnie's family actually fled Custer's army during the Battle of Little Bighorn. Did you ever see the movie Little Big Man?
Yes.
Okay, so the Battle of Custer at Little Bighorn, her family, she was 8 years old.
Wow.
And they escaped Custer. Her and her family escaped Custer, and she managed to get into the film industry. What? Whoa! I mean, how amazing is that? I just thought that was really cool. I'm also American Indian. I'm Cherokee Indian, and my family came from Oklahoma, from the Cherokee Nation. So I just found this incredibly interesting that this woman was able to do all of that, survive that, and go into Hollywood. And she did a lot of films. This woman did a lot of films, and I thought it was just kind of too bad that she wasn't credited.
Yeah.
You have to pretty much go on a search on the internet to find out about her because she's not credited in most of her films.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible. It's unimaginable, really, that she's not credited. I mean, the she's. I mean, now granted, she's only in the first moments of the film, but they're very memorable. And
Yeah, I thought she was great, and I
yeah.
just had to add that. I just had to add that.
No, I'm so glad you did because I thought that I read that too that she wasn't credit, and when I saw on the screen she's not getting credit, but
Right.
but
Sign of the times, I guess. They just didn't back then. I don't know. Um, anyway, to answer your question, yes, I thought, at first I didn't know what the relationship was with Joe, and then you see the letter, and it's, he's, her caretaker, and this and that, and I just thought, wow, she seems kind of old to be, like, passed off as this young girl.
direct.
It's just funny. It's really funny. I mean, do you think that is something that was typical in films of the time where a young woman in her mid-20s would be considered a girl?
Yeah,
The caretaker?
yeah, certainly in that time, I know Mary Pickford. She actually auditioned to play the role of Alice in Wonderland in a film that never took place, but with Walt Disney. They ended up doing an animated version much later, but she was 42 and she was trying to play a little girl. Yeah. So
Well,
yeah.
Mary Pickford was very thin and could probably pull it off in a black and white film. If it looks like it's kind of animated and it's far away.
And this was color,
Mabel
though.
is a little more, you're right, and Mabel is a little more developed and a little bit. Not she's not heavy, but she's a woman.
Yes, I
she's not a kid.
no, I think I think that we probably would be surprised of how old some of these ladies were when they were performing, looking like a 19-year-old girl. And then they'd be 25, 26, and I probably vice versa. I guess when black and white, you can get away with a lot more. I wouldn't mind going back to the music part though that you were talking about. The musical element is it's certainly not a moot point, but here's the problem. When you're watching a silent film, especially on YouTube, you don't really know if that's the actual soundtrack. And I think the one that you and I saw different versions of this. And the other one was much, much different, but it was, classical music. And what clearly wasn't the soundtrack to the actual film, but this is a real problem with watching YouTube movies, silent movies, because there's no way to know what the original cut was like, and we don't know what the sound was supposed to be. And we kind of have an idea sometimes, but then again, things get passed on and passed around, and it's so difficult to decipher what the true soundtrack is. And I agree, the soundtrack to the one that I think you saw, it's horrible, and it got more tolerable later on, and I think it got away from that. I mean, I feel like that music was recorded 20 or 30 years after the movie was made. So, and I wasn't really a fan of that sound or that music. Certainly not to this film, but yeah, I agree with you about Minnie Devereaux. It's so insane that she, was just completely, well, let's put her in the movie and give her this, fairly large part in the beginning of the film, and just kind of, ignore her on the credits. It just just didn't make any sense at all. And I imagine the racial part of it might have had something to do with it. Boy, I don't know, but she was in a lot of films, and she unfortunately died sometime shortly after this film. I think I wrote it down. Yeah, she. No, I take that back. Minnie Devereaux, she was 91 when she died. Yeah, I was wrong.
Wow.
Yeah, getting her mixed up with somebody else that I looked up. Yeah, she died in 1984.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's what it says here. 1984. And yeah, but no screen credit for it. Yeah, it's absolutely insane. And
can you tell where she was living in her last days, or where she died?
No, I didn't find that information out. I couldn't find that out. Doesn't mean it's not out there. I didn't see it though. But and then of course we go to and now we don't want to give a spoiler away, because unlike Casablanca or Gone with the Wind, a lot of people within the sound of our voices haven't seen this, and I'd really like them to watch it. So I don't want to give any spoilers, but we go to the next portion of the film where we find out that, of course, Mabel, she owns a mine that's worth some money. I don't think we know how much, but it's worth some money, but she doesn't have access. It hasn't paid off yet, and we get to the portion of the film where, now this is the part that I found odd, is here Mabel or Mickey is clearly, if she's not an adult yet, she's really close. And then all of a sudden she's just kind of pawned off on to her aunt. And it's kind of like, well, but she's either grown or almost grown, right? What did you think about that?
This was at the point where I thought they needed more title cards.
Yeah, that's possible.
I mean, I wanted to know more about what was actually supposed to be happening, rather than just guessing. When you're watching a short, like the other one that we're talking about, The Matter of Nets, you almost don't need title cards because it's so short. But when you have a longer film and there's more going on, and you see people talking back and forth, and you don't ever see a title card, that's kind of how I felt through a lot of the film. I was like, gosh, I really want to know what's actually being said. At least the gist of it, because I felt like the actors were giving so much, and that they were communicating so much. I wanted to know. I wanted to hear it because I could see it, and I wanted to know what was being said. Even though we're supposed to guess, because they're showing us in the wonderful cinematography of the day, because the director wanted that, or whatever. But I just felt like I was missing a lot of the conversation.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Now I think that in the reasoning behind pawning her off, so to speak, to the aunt is we see in the beginning when Joe says you give me gray hairs. Did you see that part? Yeah, like
she's constantly getting into trouble.
Yes,
she's constantly getting into trouble, just because that's just how she is.
Yeah, and he even grabs that. He even grabs that big belt.
And she makes the donkey eat it. That just made me laugh, and it made Minnie Ha laugh.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Okay. This brings us to another. Okay, this is another question I have.
Go ahead.
And I noticed it a little earlier with the dog and the cat, and I noticed it with the donkey, and later again with the dog. When she gets in trouble again with the dog in the store, and then later in the film, there's another thing that happens, and I know this is a sign of the times, but I'll tell you what, the ASPCA would have been all over them. because there's so much animal abuse in the film.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just like, oh my gosh, if they kick that dog again, wow. They kick the cat, they kick the dog, they make the donkey eat this thing, and I'm like, really? I mean, wow. I was just a little surprised, Back in the day, I suppose they didn't think twice about using animals in films and stuff. Now, of course, you see, when you watch a modern film, you see no animals were hurt in the making of this film. You always see that at the end of every film that has any animal in it at all.
Yeah.
But back then, it wasn't a thing.
Yeah. No, it's funny because there's so many things from 1918 that you wouldn't get by with in 2020 and films.
Gosh, no.
It's pretty crazy, and one of the reasons why I like doing this podcast is because I literally have covered every decade of films, and it's very interesting to see the evolution, sometimes devolution, but I really enjoy watching the changes from decade to decade. It's so hilarious. It's like a little roller coaster. At first anything goes in films, and then they push the envelope, and then they got censored, so to speak, for 20 years, and then they slowly got back to where now it's anything goes again almost. So
right,
yeah,
you're right. You're absolutely right.
It's kind of funny.
And have you ever watched one of these older films with a child? And what they recognize and what they see is totally different than what we've seen. They may see the film in a whole different light.
Oh, absolutely! It's pretty crazy. I'm grateful to have my kids are grown. But I'm grateful to have raised two kids that would watch classic movies with me, and I think I think they're a rarity to be able to have kids that would do that with you. But we get to the part where she goes to the aunt who clearly just wanted to get a piece of the financial pie from poor Mickey. And how fast did she turn when she found out that that Mickey didn't have any funds yet from her mine, and evidently it was going to take 20 years to get funds for it. I'm like, wow. She turned really fast. She became Cinderella's.
I thought that too.
Yes.
I thought that exactly. I thought Cinderella too, immediately.
Yeah, I was looking for a pumpkin,
I was looking for a glass slipper. Yes.
And here's another thing that's amazing, Ginger. When you look at films like this, they look like they're the copycat, but in fact they were made before. It's like, no. So all the things that came after them, they're the copycats. It's kind of funny how that works. But that character of the aunt was played by Laura Lavarney, and boy, she was mean, wasn't she?
Yeah, and that was another thing where I was like, oh, I wanted to see a title card on her. How mean she actually was, because she didn't really have one. You just see this exchange back and forth, and that she's not worth anything, and how mean she was to Mickey. But yeah, it we've seen it 100 times, right? I mean, that Cinderella story is in 100 movies, and okay, now what is she going to do, or is the man going to come and rescue her out of the thing? And okay, I'll let you move on. I guess I'm going to get into talking about stunts.
No, it's fine.
But I speaking of that, I did want to go back a tiny bit.
Sure.
Where when Mabel runs away, after she gets in trouble with the dog gets her in trouble. Rather, she goes like she's going back to, I think she's going back home, and she jumps on the horse.
Yes.
And I wondered, and I had to run it back a couple of times, and I thought, did she have a stunt double, or is that her? Then she jumps on the horse from the back.
Yes, I'm
Which
pretty
is something that only stunt people do.
Pretty sure it was a stunt double.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
And then later in the film, she's doing the race. She's in the race, the horse race. And I thought again, is she doing this?
Yeah, and
was she really good on horses?
And I plan to talk about this later, but there's another part in there where is there a double, and I think you know what I'm talking about there. The diving part. Yes. Well, matter of fact, we'll get to it in just a second. But also, let's talk about now. Of course, Minta Durfee. She played Mickey's cousin, and Elsie Drake, and now. She was married to Roscoe Arbuckle, and yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
This leads me to another question I have for you.
Go ahead.
I did not know that. Well, I didn't know that she was friends with somebody that was married to Artie, because Artie and Mabel did quite a few films together. And when Artie got in trouble, a lot of her films disappeared as well. There were a lot of films that they did together, and once he got in trouble, a lot of the films went away, which is really a shame.
Yeah, it really that's a really good point. I hadn't never quite thought of it that way. It's true, but there are so many. And you can't find very many of his films either. All the ones with them together seem to be around, which is kind of odd, but good. Most of them are available. Matter of fact, I'm going to go out and say all of the films are available with him and with Chaplin. I'm not positive about that, but I think all of them are available. But the ones where she's the star and then there's no other stars in it. It's kind of odd that would, but you may be onto something, and of course, the funny thing is the troubles that Mabel had and that Roscoe Arbuckle had and Charlie Chaplin had, they all were involved in controversies and scandals,
right.
And whether it would be something that they actually did or not, that's a different issue, but they were all involved with scandal, which led to what eventually became the Hays Code, because they were precursors to people were really upset at Hollywood. They were really mad. A lot of people really were mad at Hollywood, and I guess they continue to be today. But a lot of people were really mad at Hollywood, and that eventually led to the William Hays Code. They didn't like the fact that movie stars were embroiled in controversy or scandal. They didn't like the stuff that they were seeing on the screen. So the idea was, let's censor it all. It's interesting. Minta Durfee was married to Arbuckle, and she stuck with him almost to the end. But they eventually got divorced. And, but in Arbuckle's case, I just talked about him with someone wrote a book about his films, Steve Massa, and we talked about him, and now we didn't talk a whole lot about the scandal, but what a lot of people don't realize is that Roscoe Arbuckle couldn't. He needed he needed what's the drug called? He couldn't have sex. So anybody that thinks he would rape somebody, it's just insane.
Right.
And
I know. I remember reading that, and we all know that the media can create stuff.
Oh,
And there were
sure.
also people in the media that didn't like certain actors. And there were people in the media who had a hand in producing some films. As we talked about in It, right?
Yeah.
With Clara Bow.
Yeah.
Very prominent media person made and wrote that movie and produced it.
That's right.
They had a hand in stuff. It wasn't just like, oh, they're just reporting something they heard. I mean, they had a hand in some stuff. And, there's somebody a long time ago said, you can't believe everything you read.
Yes.
And it's true.
Yeah.
You shouldn't believe everything that the media says.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it's right. It doesn't mean it's correct. And I think that they really destroyed a lot of careers.
Yeah.
That would have blossomed and could have done a lot more. And I personally, I feel bad for Fatty Arbuckle.
Yeah.
I don't think that any of that was true.
No, and Mabel Normand was in the wrong place at the wrong time for the problems that she was involved with, and so it's unfortunate that they got involved with these scandals. Those two in particular. Now we know Charlie Chaplin married teenage girls. That's definitely a fact. But
he was trouble. He was trouble. But women should have known that.
Yeah,
they really should have.
But it's not murder either. So I mean, and it was a different time, and I've had this discussion with people before, and it's like, do you not realize that people used to get married when they were 12 regularly? And it used to happen, that you'd get married when you were 12 and you'd die when you were 30. If you were lucky, you'd make it to 30. And so give me a break. 100 years ago, a guy married a 16-year-old. I get it. It sounds terrible, but it was 100 years ago. So it's kind of hard to get that, flamed up about it anymore. But people still do. People still do. They do. But yeah, Minta Durfee. What did you? We got off there. What did you think about her role in the film as Mickey's cousin?
Her part was very short. Again, I don't think that they really give you a chance to really see her character, so you don't fall in love with her and you don't become attached to her because she's about to lose.
Yeah.
I kind of think that's meant to happen.
Yeah.
That's the way it's written. So you don't feel any remorse for a sub character. Everybody roots for the lead, as usual, and they don't really want us to feel for her.
No.
That she loses her guy. And so they put it up there that she's the sophisticated rich. She doesn't need the money. She doesn't need the guy. She can get another guy because she's got money. And her mother is a pain in the butt. And you don't feel that. You don't feel bad for her.
No, you don't.
And I think that's on purpose. Yeah, that's on purpose.
No, excellent point.
As an actress, I think she did a great job, and she did the part and what she was directed to do. I thought she was cute, and I thought she played the role fine, but it was very small.
Yep, and of course she gets involved with she's involved with Herbert Thornhill's character, and she gets involved in a love triangle, and it's somewhat predictable what's going to happen anyway. But her character is fairly thin, and she just there's not a lot of meat on what they're trying to accomplish with her, and I think they're trying to make her look like this cold person that just, isn't really someone to cheer for, unlike Mabel Normand. But we've got now. And since I don't want to give away too much in the film, I do want to talk about certain scenes, though. Now, I don't know about you, but I think my favorite scene in this film is watching Mabel slide down the banister. She just couldn't help herself.
So much that she does it 3 times.
Yes. Yeah, and we have this drama, but then all of a sudden within this drama, we've got this funny short film within the long film. If you just watch that, 7, 8, 10 minutes of that action, you would think it's just a fun comedy, a typical Mabel Normand comedy. But there's it's just that's just a funny scene within the film, and I really adore that. Do you have a favorite scene?
I got to tell you, the banister thing. As an actor, I had to slide down a banister in an independent film, a student film, and it's actually not easy to do.
I'll bet.
I was on a set, and it was a set that was created for the film, so it wasn't in somebody's house, and the banister was not waxed at all.
Oh, no.
In fact, it was freshly painted, and I was playing the comedic character, and they wanted me to slide down the banister in a white dress, and it was a blue satin dress, and the overlay was a white lace overlay, so it looked like a white dress with a blue undertone.
Mm-hmm.
And the director went, "Okay, Ginger, come on down the banister," kind of like she did, where you're kind of straddling the banister and you come down, and it wasn't like a spiral staircase where you had these twists and turns at all. It was just like, I don't know, 3 feet of banister, right? You had to sell it. You had to make it look like, okay, I've been coming down and down and down, flights and flights and flights, and it wasn't the case. And it wasn't slick at all. In fact, I got on the inside of my legs, I got burned by the, when you move quickly down a banister, and you're trying to hang on.
Oh my goodness.
Like rug burn, and
it's hurting me just thinking about it,
After the second take, I looked at the dress, and the dress in the white lace had 2 stripes of brown paint running up the dress. So they had to shoot everything a little bit further away from me for the rest of the shoot, because I had ruined my dress when I only had one.
Oh, no.
So I can tell you, it's not easy to slide down a banister. And she did it 3 times. She probably had to do it 60 times.
Yeah, she did it with some real grace and style. There's no question about it.
That was funny. That was really cute. And, sweeping it under the rug. I knew she was going to do it. We all knew.
Oh, yeah.
She was going to sweep it under the rug. You see it coming. Like, for 3 minutes, you sit there watching her like, as soon as that woman turns her back, it's going under the rug. It's going under the bare head. I just know it.
And there it goes, and it was still funny. Yes. There's certain people that you can see the joke coming from a mile away, but it's still funny. And Mabel Normand was one of those people. And we have some other terrific scenes in it, which, where we talk about her riding a racehorse. And how crazy was that? All of a sudden, she's in a horse race.
I know it, and I wondered the whole time where they filmed that, and I'm wondering if it was Santa Anita in Los Angeles.
Yeah. I don't know. That's a good question, but it was fun to watch. It was definitely fun to watch, and when there's a little bit of running around and general silliness, but one of the other scenes is what I was going to talk about earlier, was that diving scene, was that a double? And was she wearing anything? Because
Gosh.
that was some real camera work, for 1918. That was some real camera work, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder too. Because it was far away, and I thought, is that a double? Is that actually her? That's kind of scandalous. Well, it's a lot scandalous in
Mm-hmm.
1918, and I did wonder, I'm like, is that a double? Did she actually do that? I don't know. Is there a way to find out?
I have tried. I may find out. There are a couple people I might be able to ask. Like Timothy Leffler. He might know the answer to the question. I actually spoke with Mabel's. I want to say grandson. Apologize if I'm getting it wrong, but grandson Stephen Normand. And I tried to get him to come on this show, but he's not particularly well, so I just didn't pester him about it. Otherwise, I could have gotten him. I could have gotten him on.
Wow.
Yeah, but yeah, he's a nice gentleman, but I just couldn't quite capture a good time to get him on, and I just decided to not worry about it too much. But it's fun to say that I talked to him. So I enjoyed that, but I just couldn't quite get a conversation recorded. But yeah, I it's not something that I probably wouldn't ask Steven, to be honest with you, but Timothy Leffler, I might know the answer to that question. If you are listening, Timothy, go ahead and let me know. Yeah, it's really an interesting scene, and if you watch it, you're like, what am I? It's like, what am I exactly am I looking at here? Am I looking at a body double? Am I looking at Mabel? And am I looking at somebody with a swimsuit on and it just looks like they don't have a swimsuit on? We just don't know. But the far away shot part of it really does. And I think it's funny to watch the man that's, peeking in on her, how, the other guy's like, hey, what are you looking at over there? And he flips the thing around where you can't find it anymore.
Yeah, and I wonder too if back in the day, if this film was brand new and you're watching it in a movie theater, is it more clear? Is it more clear in 1918 than
Boy, good question.
A copy of a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy? Are they seeing something clearer than what we're seeing?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I'd really like to know. Normally, Mabel is all buttoned up, and even I would stop short of saying that she was a sex symbol of any kind. She was beautiful, but we think of her as this beautiful, sweet lady, and we don't think of her as Mae West.
Well, this was way before May.
Yeah.
But we also thought of her as a comedian.
Yeah.
And the funny girl is not usually the sex symbol.
No, it's true. It's true. And it's true. It's interesting to know. And I'm definitely going to continue to try to find out. I think if the people who might know, might think they know, and they might be wrong. Maybe they're right. I don't know. But whoever filmed that scene is not with us anymore, and nobody is around to verify it. But it sure would be interesting to get some more solid speculation on it. But yeah, I generally. It's just interesting to see. Normally she's all kind of, always wearing appropriate clothing, and so to see that, it's a little jarring whenever you're
Right.
not used to
Do you
seeing.
think Do you think this was the only film that she did that was like this?
No, there's another scene in another one where clearly she's undressing behind a like a those things here you undress on a kind of swimming pool. Like people can see but they can't really see. Like kind of
Oh,
like a.
like the cabanas?
Yeah. So you could see,
Okay.
you could see the silhouette,
Right.
and the silhouette
Oh, okay.
was pretty clear. But then again, was that really Mabel's silhouette, or was that just some other girl, or who knows? But it's interesting to see. Those are the only two that I know of. But yeah, those still are yeah, it's pretty crazy for the time, and one would think anyway. But we think of we think of old movie. A lot of people think of old movies, and they automatically think, oh, the 40s and 50s. I mean, they were talking about 1918.
Right.
This is something that's it's a different time. I mean, funny, Ginger, because I get in a lot of trouble with some friends and family, and I've got a son-in-law that gets visibly angry at me whenever I infer that a film from 1960 is a modern film. I mean, I think of a movie like The Apartment or Something Like It Hot, which actually came out in '59. I think of those movies as modern films,
It
and
is.
and because they began to break that Hays Code, and they talked about themes that weren't talked about in movies in the years prior. And I get people so upset with me whenever I tell them a 1960 film is a modern film, and they get so mad at me. But compare that to 1918. I mean, D.W. Griffith and Max Sennett, these guys had virtually no real. They had no modern equipment. D.W. Griffith was just absolutely. It was amazing what he was able to do with films, and that's a whole other conversation. But
Right.
we could talk for about 3 or 4 hours about D.W. Griffith.
Yeah, and the people that whoever shot Charlie's films too. I mean, people back then did the cinematographers did some amazing work.
Yeah, and in Charlie's case, he had
done before.
Yeah, in Charlie's case, he had one camera guy that he counted on the most, and his name is escaping me. But he had one guy that he counted on most of the time, and he counted on that guy. I one thing I can tell you is that you wouldn't want to be in a movie that Charlie Chaplin directed, because he was harsh. Kind of like okay, I know we've done it 30 times. We're going to do it again. And that's the way Charlie is. It's kind of like the opposite of the way you hear Clint Eastwood described. Clint Eastwood's like, okay, we're getting out of here at 5:00, guys. So we're gonna get this right.
I've got a harder one for you. I've got a tougher one for you. Frank Darabont.
Oh, I've heard he was. Oh, I've heard that. Yeah.
Frank Darabont. I have worked with him. I did work with him on a Jim Carrey film called The Majestic.
Oh, that's right. You were in that. I forgot.
Yeah, we shot that one scene. It was the outdoor party scene for 2 weeks.
Uh-huh.
At the Disney Ranch. At the Disney Ranch where they used to film Little House on the Prairie, and we did night shoots from 6 p.m. till 6 a.m. 7 a.m. all night shoots for 2 weeks. And then we went on a studio lot in Hollywood and we shot for another week. Just that scene. And he shoots every angle, including a crane. The same thing over and over and over in different, shots of different actors and different extras. I was a dancer in the scene. I was a swing dancer. And I got I made some serious money out of that shoot. I mean, three and a half weeks, I think, I filmed that one scene. So, yeah, there are still actors that still do that. And I mean, directors that still do that. And I guess they can afford to because, I mean, they're huge budget films. And we did that over and over. I felt sorry for Jim Carrey because Jim is a very personal kind of guy. He doesn't like a lot of people, and the set was very closed, and he doesn't like people touching him. And there were only 5 people that could touch him, and I was one of them. And he was like, "It's okay for you and you and you and you and you to touch me. Nobody else touched me." And I mean, it was high security. It was nuts. It was really nuts. Back in the day, I mean, back when they did silent films, I mean, it was crazy. I've seen crowd scenes and scenes where there's a lot of people, and it was just a free for all.
Yeah.
And these actors, there was no unions, and it was crazy. I can't imagine actors back then being able to say, "Don't touch me," because it wasn't going to happen. It wasn't happening.
Isn't that something, though?
Yeah. So yes, there are still directors that are still do that, and they can because they got the money to spend. I don't know what I imagine Charlie probably could do that too. Maybe he had the money to spend and the hours to burn.
Yeah. Yes, he did. Yeah, and I mean, he was a perfectionist, and he got it right. But I mean, it's there's got to be a point. And now, what I might suggest, you're talking about Frank Darabont, I might suggest that one of the reasons why he hasn't done a big film recently is because of that style. Because I think a lot of actors refuse to be on sets like that one, and sometimes it's to their detriment of their career or their resume. But sometimes actors feel like, you know what, I don't want to be with that guy because he is rough, and I don't want to be on the set at 7 a.m. Till 10 p.m. and only actually be performing for 12 of those minutes. And that I think that's what a lot of people might tell you on that. But
well,
you could
I
him
differ a little bit because
tell me, yeah.
There are still hungry people.
That's true.
There's still quite a lot of actors that are like, "I'll do anything,"
do
especially
anything.
right now.
Yeah.
It's Hollywood is very desperate right now, and I'm in LA right now during COVID and the whole, all of this, and it's a free for all. It's the Wild West right now. You've got the unions trying to keep up with everything that's going on, and a new platform popping up every day, and Amazon, Tubi, like I'm on, and
Yeah.
all of these networks, and they're changing hands. Disney Plus, HBO Plus, all of these networks and all of these different platforms that are trying to grab all this content and everything. And as far as actors go, there's all this stuff coming up. Audition for this. This is a new show that's going to be on this new network. This is a new thing that's going to be here, and da-da-da-da-da-da. And it's the Wild West. It's crazy. The unions can't keep up, and everybody is just like trying to work because a lot of industries have been shut down. Even productions have been shut down. A lot of things are shooting in other places, Georgia or Utah or wherever, Canada or wherever, because it's so expensive to shoot in Los Angeles. Everybody's just trying to work. And I do submissions every day. I'm always trying to find work, and I'm always trying to get a job. And I'm seeing stuff that's just like $100 a day, and people are grasping at it.
Yeah.
Actors are grasping at $100 a day to do a lead part in something that's not union.
Yeah.
Short film or whatever. It's insane.
It really
$100 a day, and that's it. Like no residuals, no, that's it.
No, it's really become something, and with even taking COVID out of the equation, it was becoming a little bit like that with the with all the streaming options. I I spoke with Harold Lloyd's granddaughter about how his dad would feel about his films being so easily accessible, and she said, "Oh, they'd be." She said he'd be horrified with the ability to capture things off of YouTube. The way they are chopped up, and they're, oh, this part wasn't right, and she said that he would be freaked out if he saw it. And the thing is, though, with all these streaming options, what's happening is, I mean, if let's just take COVID out of the equation for a minute and pretend like it didn't exist, or go back a year in time, okay. And when we had a point in time where we were having 250, $300 million action hero movies, or comic book heroes, or whatever you want to call it, and then, or you'd have like a $500,000 indie film, and where people didn't have anything, and it's like, what in the world's happened to these films? Like you talked about, The Majestic, or a film that had well, I think The Majestic probably had, I not knowing exactly, that was Jim Carrey in his $30 million picture phase. So that probably had a $60 million budget at least. But nonetheless, I mean, what happened to these $40 million pictures and $30 million pictures? They don't exist. It's either, a couple of million, maybe you pay, someone like Meryl Streep give her a good paycheck to appear in it. And then all of a sudden, you've got maybe a $2 million movie, or you got a $300 million movie, and there's nothing in between, or very little in between. And there were some, I think there were some glimmers of hope at the end of last year when you saw a movie. I don't know if you saw Knives Out, but I thought that was
yes, I did.
That was a fantastic mid-level budget film. Give us more of those. And I'm hoping.
Yes, and it wasn't predictable. It was great.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I'm hoping that by the time things get somewhat back to normal, I've been saying for a long time that these comic book hero movies, I mean, it's going to take two big flops, and then they're going to do this. They're going to go the same way the westerns did and the musicals did in the 70s. They're going to just go away, because Hollywood has made enough of them. I liked Superman, from 1978, and I liked Batman from 1989, and I even liked The Dark Knight, and but it's like gotten to the point where it's like we're saturated with these comic book films, and we don't have enough psychological thrillers or action films or comedies for we don't have enough comedies anymore, and we don't have enough of anything. What happened to the romantic comedy? What happened to the films, from the John Grisham type movies from the 90s? Like, what happened to those? Because Hollywood gave up because there were a few flops. And,
I think part of that too is that, the producers and the people in charge of making the films have stopped listening to the people. And they've stopped listening to what the audience wants.
Yeah.
And they think that if something does well, then another thing just like it will do well, and another thing just like it will do well, and another thing just like it, just like it, just like it, just like it. And they're losing us. Superman in the 1970s did so well because it's Richard Donner. And Richard Donner, everything he touches is gold.
Oh, he's great.
Seriously. I was so lucky to work with Richard Donner on Radio Flyer. It was the first film that I did.
Oh, great movie.
Right? Oh, yeah. I was a teenager, and I got to be Elijah Wood's stand-in. And it was amazing. It was an amazing experience for me. And of course, I was a huge fan of Goonies and Sean Astin, and I mean everything about that film. I knew everything backwards and forwards. And when I met Richard, it was just like, oh, wow, I'm just so excited to be part of this. And the assistant director, befriended me and gave me connections in Los Angeles. And when I moved to LA a couple of years later, I was able to connect with people that helped me out. And I mean, it was an amazing experience. And like I said, I mean, it's Richard Donner. Everything that he does is just going to be gold. There's certain directors and certain producers where everything they're going to do is just going to be amazing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
But I think they've gotten away from listening to their audience.
Yeah.
And then reality TV came through, right? And so everybody thinks, oh, the Kardashians, let's watch this train wreck, and it does well and gets a lot of people watching it because they're watching a train wreck, and they think, oh, let's do more of that, more of that, more of that, more of that, and let's do truckers on the road and Pawn Stars and all this stuff, and then they start making movies that way.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's just, the whole thing is just a mess.
No, it is.
The problem is they stop listening to their audience, and they're throwing stuff out there that they think, oh, and in the last 10 years, it's been remakes.
Yeah.
Let's remake this. Let's remake that. It did well then. It's going to do well now. Let's remake this and that and blah, blah, blah. And it's just like they can't listen to an original idea.
No, it's rough. It's rough. It's rough going. Well, you know what? If you don't mind, let's get back to Mabel Normand, though.
Okay.
I'm looking at my sheet here, and I'm going, wait a minute. We're talking about Mabel Normand, which is,
I know.
Well, the thing is she represents of the beginning of Hollywood, like Mary Pickford, not even like Chaplin, but she and Mary Pickford were two of the original stars, and she went on. Mabel went on to do what she really wanted to do, which was feature films, and this Mickey was an absolutely huge success and made millions of dollars. And I thought I wrote down the exact dollar figure, but it made about almost 100 times the budget. I think 250.
I read somewhere that they released this for like 3 years.
Yes, it was
for 3 or 4 years.
That's absolutely right. It was a late release. Max Sennett wasn't sold on it. And I think Matt, it's like one of those things where again, Max Sennett was a guy that wanted to churn out a film every week. And his deal was, I'm going to churn out one. It's kind of like Max Sennett was McDonald's, and he would just like make sure and just churn them out. And, maybe you really like the taste of that particular quarter pounder or something, but his movies weren't generally high quality. And I don't know if have you ever seen Max Sennett act, by the way?
I have not seen him.
Oh my gosh! Do yourself a favor. Watch the film. Okay. If you can do it before you go to bed tonight, watch The Fatal Mallet. It's 10 minutes or 10 to 12 minutes. The Fatal Mallet. It's got Charlie Chaplin fighting with Max Sennett, and also oh gosh, his other main nemesis, and I can't think of what it is. Oh my gosh, I'm really beating myself up over not, but it's called The Fatal Mallet, and I think it's probably the best of the Chaplin, Mabel Normand films. And
what year is that?
1914, I believe.
Wow.
Yeah, and it has Max Sennett in just behaving. I mean, he's just a terrible actor. It's a fun movie to watch, but he is an awful actor. And
I know more about Max Sennett than I do. What I know about Max Sennett was he was known for like getting girls into a beauty contest.
Yes.
Max Sennett
his bathing beauties.
That's what I know of him. Now, I don't
Yep.
really know of him as a director or an actor or anything else other than kind of this god of of beauty contests for women. You know, this guy that discovers all these ladies and puts them in, you know, modeling positions or acting.
Yeah, he probably had a thing or two to do with one of those models, which is probably what caused the problem with Mabel and him. But yeah, I mean, Maxon is an interesting character, and I don't think we know the full extent to just how he was. I think a lot of what we're going to hear is hearsay. You know, it's funny we talking about the apartment and something like it hot earlier. Like, we know who Billy Wilder was because he had interviews later in life in my lifetime that he was interviewed. You know, we kind of know John Ford, we know Alfred Hitchcock, but these guys from the early 1900s, we don't really know them. And there's no interview with them, and there's nobody really to say, yeah, that guy was a jerk, or hey, that guy was a really nice man. And there's no one around that can verify it. And so, you know, even the people that are relatives of those stars that are still with us, they still don't know. Not really. So it's a, you know, copy of a copy of a copy. Isn't that what we said earlier? Yeah. I mean, we don't know. You know, we don't know. But, you know, but Mabel went on, and she was able to utilize this very successful film and be in 12 feature films. But she moved to Samuel Goldwyn and moved to Goldwyn Pictures, and her career eventually waned, where she was making peanuts when she moved to Hal Roach, and that was a real demotion for her to move to Hal Roach from Samuel Goldwyn, and you know, she was not making very much money with Hal Roach, and her career had pretty much fizzled, and unfortunately, so did her health, and probably to a great extent her mental health, because I think, you know, she was involved in two. I mean, if people don't know this, you know, she was involved with two murder scandals, and it's extremely unlikely she you know, like William Desmond Taylor, you know, was one of them, and she was ruled out as a suspect very early on, and it was highly unlikely that she did it, and she didn't really have motive, but nonetheless, there was still a connection there. So people said, I know, okay, did she do that? But then when she got involved with the second one, which she definitely didn't do, you know, unfortunately, she had lost favor with some of the fans, and with a great deal of her fans. And, you know, people didn't like scandals back then. You know, they still don't,
Right.
but back then it was just unacceptable to be involved with two murder cases. And wonder, what I really would like, Ginger, is I would really like to hear Mabel. I wish I could have heard her talk. There's absolutely no record of her voice anywhere.
Wow.
Yeah, you can't find her voice anywhere. A lot of people have speculated that her voice was squeaky and she wouldn't have translated very well into talkies, which, curiously, Fatty Arbuckle, he didn't make any big talkies, but his voice translated very well to talkies. He made some Vitaphone pictures, and I've only seen one of them in its entirety, but it's quite humorous. And he was able to use the physical humor that he was used to using and combine that with funny lines. And Shemp Howard was in that film. And forgive me if I can't think of the name of it. But if you YouTube it, you can YouTube Fatty Arbuckle Vitaphone, and you'll find it. There's only
Okay.
one. I think you're only gonna find one. And Steve Massa would know. I interviewed him a few months ago. He would definitely know what's available. But yeah, there's no voice, no record or voice anywhere, and I
Really?
yeah, no record of it anywhere, and nobody
What
has
was
it.
the last film that she did? What year was it?
It would have been 20. Going off my memory, 24. I don't have the IMBD in front of me. 24.
And that wasn't a talkie?
No, no. Talkies didn't come into play till like the Jazz Singer was 27, and it wasn't until about 28, 29 where I mean, like Laurel Hardy were still making silent films in 29, and but by 1930, everybody other than Charlie Chaplin had transitioned to talkies. At that point, it took a little while, but it was. There are a couple of earlier 20s films that have sound effects, but no talking, and but yeah, there's just nothing available to hear Mabel talking.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about. I love, I wish there was an interview with Mabel Normand. Just yeah. We've got interviews with people a generation younger than she is on video. We have Joan Crawford interviews, and we have you can find stuff about Veronica Lake, where she had interviews, and like there's some of the older film stars, but their interviews are during the TV age, and and so even Theda Bara, she was on TV in the 50s, and she's got an interview online, so and that's a very interesting interview, by the way, if you listen to it. It's amazing what you can find on YouTube, by the way, but you cannot find Mabel Normand's voice.
So does Mary Pickford have a talkie? Have you heard?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Mary Pickford had transitioned not well into the talkies, but she did transition. She made movies on into the 30s. Her husband Doug Fairbanks fared a lot better with talkies, but he was fairly disinterested. Matter of fact, they made one film together, and they the Tamer of the Shrew, and they famously pretty much, I think their relationship disintegrated during the filming of that movie because Mary was just very upset with Doug not seemingly not taking his lines seriously and pretending like it was still a silent film, but in fact he was able to just wing it, and he did really well winging it even into the talkies. And Mary Pickford was a stage actress, and she took herself very seriously, and she was, bent out of shape, that her husband would behave that way and just not take things seriously. And they only performed together one time, and there are some people that would say that's what ended their marriage. But yeah, that was 1929, the Taming of the Shrew. That's a fun movie, and I dare say it's every bit as good as the one 40 years later with Elizabeth Taylor. But
Okay.
but yeah, Ginger, you learn a lot doing this podcast. I've talked to enough people, read enough articles, books, and watched enough videos and watched enough documentaries, and it's like I know a lot about a little. Or wait a minute, no, yeah, I know a little about a lot. I should say I know a little bit a lot. So
that's my answer when you ask me about vintage things. I know a lot of things about. Well, I know a lot of things about a lot of things, but I don't know everything.
yeah, exactly. I was on somebody else's podcast a few weeks ago, and I I didn't feel like I was an expert on the film we were talking about, but everything just came out fluid. I'm like, okay, I guess I did know what I was talking about, and I'm like, okay, well, that's good enough for me. But I was nervous as all get out going on that podcast because I felt like I'm no expert on this, but you know. But hey, Ginger, I swear it is so fun to talk with you. Though you have a different layer of knowledge than most people that come on here, and I love the fact that you're an entertainer and you come at it with that point of view. And I've talked to writers, I've talked to directors, and but you're like, you got a legit IMBD, and and yes, yeah, I would tell everybody, watch that silent movie, the wild man of, what is it called again? The Wild Man of what?
The Wild Man of Kakadu.
Kakadu.
It's on YouTube. Yes.
Yes, and
it is a lot of fun. It's definitely a lot of fun, and I'm really grateful that I've been able to do the things that I've been able to do, and been able to work with the people that I've been able to work with, and everybody that I've worked with. It's just such a learning experience.
Yeah, and
it's a passion I have. I mean, my love is comedy, like sketch comedy. And working on Conan, they're very free to let you explore and do things the way that you want to do them. You get to do them 100 times if you want to. And, I always go, oh, can I do it one more time? And can I do something different? Oh, yeah, go ahead. And I'll change it up and I'll do it different. And sometimes the most organic thing is the one that they keep and the one that they love. But being able to work with brilliant people and having that experience and that opportunity is it's just really amazing. It's an amazing feeling, and I imagine that must have been what it was like back in the day when the silent actors, they didn't have sound and they didn't have, you had to do everything. Everything had to be overly expressive. As we know, Mary Pickford is just like, I was thinking this the other day when I was watching Mender of Nets, how overly expressive she is. And the arms are out and the hands all in my face. And she was... That today would have been considered overacting. But that's what they had to do because they couldn't use their words.
Yep.
And I'm just so grateful that I'm able to do that. And I'm able to do that in my work, and the people that I've worked with have let me do that. Thank God that Keith Picot was so willing to let me go overboard and let me just go crazy with some of the bits that we did. I mean, we shot that silent film in 3 days, and it was just such a fun experience. And I imagine that must have been what it was like back in the silent era, when you had to go overboard because there were no words, and once in a great while, and you didn't know what titles they were actually going to put up, and if you're expressive enough to show what's happening in the scene and what's going on, they don't put up a title card.
Right.
Because whatever you're doing is getting through to the audience. How great is that?
it is great. And one time, we've mentioned Charlie Chaplin how many times today, but one time he and Buster Keaton had a contest with each other. They were both working on a film at the almost the exact same time, and they had a contest to see who would have less title cards in their film. Charlie won. It was like 29 to 23 or something like that, and for a feature film, or something.
That's amazing. That's amazing. How cool is that? That's really neat.
Yeah, they
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they didn't. They each didn't know how many title cards the other had, and at the end of the film, I think The General was what Buster was filming. Oh gosh, I can't remember the film Charlie was filming at the time, but they were filming two simultaneously, and they each didn't know how many title cards the other had, and they were trying desperately to make a great film that's expressive, but not too many title cards, and it's really kind of funny. But
That's great.
yeah, but and going back to your stuff with Conan, you know, I I'm probably not the only one, but there was a moment a few months ago where I sat there and watched video after video after video of your Conan skits, and it was just funny. I kept seeing it on YouTube, and yet one of them had I think one of them is a montage if I'm not mistaken.
Right. Yeah.
And yeah, but you have a montage of videos that was really great stuff, and then the Wild Man of Kakadu. Am I saying that right?
Yes.
Okay, Wild Man of Kakadu. And
Kakadu. I'm pretty sure Kakadu is in Australia.
yes, okay, and then watch for Ginger Pauley midway during the film, trying so desperately to get the attention of a police guard, and she couldn't get it without the donut and coffee. But
The dance scene right? The
yeah,
dance scene was great.
yeah, no, it was. Well, Ginger, we could probably talk for another few hours, but I probably better wrap it. I'm going to put you on the spot. You willing to come back and do another one in another few months?
I would love to. And here's a challenge.
Uh-huh.
If it's possible, I would love to be on a podcast interview with one other person. Maybe somebody that you've interviewed before who knows a lot about silent films, and we could talk about a silent film, and maybe I can bring up questions and they would be able to answer.
Oh, that's a really good.
It could make for a really interesting conversation.
That would be really good. I maybe could have brought Timothy Leffler on. I probably could have talked him into it, and I think he's probably willing to talk about Mabel anytime. But I assume we probably have to have another subject though the next time around. I think you brought up Louise Brooks one time, and which.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I think maybe we do something like that. But yeah, that would be fantastic to have somebody that if I can find a Louise Brooks genius out there, then I'm sure there is one. But I got to tell you, Ginger, I dig pretty hard for people that I think are appropriate to come on. And I want someone to have I really like people that have different perspectives than I do, because you come at it from a really a completely different point of view than a lot of the other guests that I have on, because they're they're, like I said, they're writing or directing, and but those are different kinds of people than performers, and at least, well, some of them do it all. But do you ever write any of in the stuff that you've done on Conan or anything, or do you write your own stuff at all?
Not really.
Yeah.
When we did Vintage America with Ginger, my writer producer partner Willow, she's a really good. She's a writer. That's what she does. And I would actually go to her and say, okay, I want to say this. Can you please put it in my words? And she would do it. I mean, she's a good writer. She's a really good writer. I'm like, I want to say this, but I want to say it intelligently, and I go, blah, 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 blah. And she'd go, da, 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 da. And I'm like, oh, that's perfect. Yes, okay, I'll say that. So I have written creatively as far as writing reports and stories about movies and things like that. But as far as writing my own content, it's not really something I do. Doing an unscripted show like Vintage America with Ginger, I would go to her, I would go to Willow and say, I have a question. How do I say this? And she's like, well, you say this. I'm like, oh, that sounds much more smart than the words I was originally using. So we'll use your words. So my answer to that question would be no, not really. As far as writing content that I'm going to say, I usually just have somebody else write it. When I do Conan, they have writers. They have 5 or 6 writers on set. When I did the sketch Christian Bees, which was a sketch that was all me, there were 3 or 4 writers, Conan's writers, on set with me when I did that sketch. And we only did it a few different times. They had everything on teleprompter. So I'm very good with reading a teleprompter like it's live. I'm very good at that. It's a skill. I had to learn how to do that. But they were very giving and very flexible when I went, you guys didn't put this in. How about this? When I would add to it or come up with suggestions, they were very open to everything. And that's what I love about the writers and the people that work with Conan. They're just very, very open and very willing to also listen to the actor and accept my input. And I'll go, hey, what about this? And what about that? Can we do it one time like this? And they'll laugh, and I'll do it, and then they'll like that's the one they keep. So it's really great to be able to work with creative people who are just like very flexible and willing to work with you. I mean, it's really a godsend. It's really a gift to be able to work with people like that, because it's not always that way. Sometimes writers want their content written or read the way it's written. Definitely. In most auditions I have to go with exactly every and, but, and it, and everything has to be to the letter when I read an audition. Or they may not cast you because you're not reading what the writer wrote.
Yep. There's a little bit of insecurity with writers in those cases.
Yep. Exactly, and I know that, and luckily, when I'm on a set that I know, when I'm working with the Conan writers, I can be a little bit flexible, and they're flexible with me, and I know that we can work easily together, and it's going to be great. So it just really depends. It just depends on the project you're working on.
Well, everything's going to be great with you, Ginger. Particularly Vintage America. Watch it on Amazon Prime, Tubi, and like I said, check out all of those great Ginger Pauley videos on YouTube too. You can see her stuff from Conan, and you have a gift. You have a gift, Ginger.
Thank you so much, David, and thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah.
As you said, we could do this for hours.
Yeah, we could. We really could. Well, we'll definitely plan to do it again, and I'll get in touch with you again, and I'm going to try to locate somebody that knows a little bit something about something, and maybe see if we can plan that. That's a really good idea. I've never done a 3-way conversation before, but I think it's doable. So let's give it a shot. Anyway, well, anything else you want to plug, Ginger?
I think that we've covered mostly everything that we can at this point. It was really a lot of fun, as usual. Thank you so much, David, for having me. And yes, absolutely, let's do this again.
That sounds fantastic. I think I'm